violent predator off the street.
Well, just 10 hours after police put out his picture and the fact that he was already registered as a violent sexual predator, they now have him in custody. He being 51-year-old Robert Johnson, who walked himself into the 18th Philadelphia Police Precinct, also home of Southwest detectives, just before 8 a.m. this morning. They had worked hand-in-hand with the Special Victims Unit to link Johnson to 4 attacks in less than a month, rapes and robberies, all with a gun, all in the same neighborhood, all just blocks from his front door where he was a registered sex offender. A gun now police have, along with items stolen from victims, some who positively identified Johnson from 2 past mugshots from past similar crimes he'd been convicted of before being put back on the streets to commit again.
We know, we believe 4 potential victims, warrants for at least 3 different incidents. So it's important for the public that we get that information out. Obviously, we're always concerned when you have someone out there committing violent assaults like this. So, you know, with the great work of the men and women in Special Victims, they worked to develop some tips, and they developed a tip that enabled them to show some photo spreads to our victims, and they were able to make positive identifications. I believe they did locate a weapon as well when they served their search warrant. So that's good news.
The police commissioner confirmed what we've been told by a detective, that a tip told police where they'd find him. The public-police partnership works when someone has the smarts to help their fellow Philadelphians. Was it a tip that led to him? Because we had this picture up all morning. We thought you would probably get some help in this, the public knowing that what he was doing to women out there.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a fine example of the collaboration we have with you folks in the media. So someone knew him for reasons that I don't want to get into right now. And they notified us, and in turn, I think he saw all the coverage, and he elected to turn himself in because he knew we were coming for him.
Sometimes when crimes like these are so horrific, keeping the information to yourself and away from detectives is something somebody's conscience just won't allow. At police headquarters, Steve Keeley, Fox 29 News. Back to you.
Again, that was Steve Keeley reporting live this morning from Philadelphia Police Headquarters about the arrest of a suspect in a series of sexual assaults in West Philadelphia. We're going to be aiming to carry a news conference. It's scheduled to begin at 10:30 this morning, live here on News Now. We'll bring that to you as soon as it happens. In the meantime, Jennifer Joyce was out in Hershey, Pennsylvania today. The heavy rainfall there has been swamping the sweetest place on earth. They've been rescuing people from flooded homes and setting up shelters in Hershey for a 3rd day in a row. And for a 3rd day in a row, the park is actually closed. Jenny reported this morning from outside Hershey Park with details on the emergency there.
Well, it is a big bummer. Not 1, but 2 Pennsylvania amusement parks have been closed now due to flooding. Today's day number 3 for Hershey Park here. You can see some of the waters here rising at the park. We've seen some of the aerial shots of water throughout the park, and also on the outskirts, some of the low-lying streets and underneath bridges and whatnot. Knoebels is the other amusement park that has also been closed this week. That's about an hour and a half north from here. Hershey, the first day it was closed was Monday after severe rainfall led to flooded creeks and streams that overflowed in and around the park. They tried to open up on Tuesday, but that didn't last very long. They were closed yesterday, and they will be closed again today. Hershey Park says it's taking things one day at a time and has not yet decided if it will reopen for the weekend. The nearby Swatera Creek, which was expected to peak at about 10 feet above flood stage last night, is not supposed to fully recede until this weekend, and we don't know if anything in the park sustained damage. As far as Knoebels, it's also been underwater this week. Look at how high the waterways are. Cleanup is continuing, but it is unfortunate. We know a lot of families are here. We know that this is a very, very popular vacation time for families before the kids go back to school next month. So Hershey is trying to work with these families, and they've been telling them all over social media and replying to emails and posts that yes, your summer tickets will be able to be used later this fall, I think through September 30th. So if you do have a ticket, if it is possible for you to get back here, otherwise reach out to the park directly because they are willing to work with you. Back to you.
This is a look at Ultimate Doppler. We were looking at a wider shot. Now it's a little bit closer. You can still see there's some rain moving through the area. Some light showers right now. The heaviest stuff has moved off the coast. Here are the current conditions. You're at 74 degrees in Philadelphia. 70s most of the area. Atlantic City is a bit warmer at 80. Mount Pocono lower in the high 60s. The heat index. Let's get you the heat index here. It feels a bit warmer already in Atlantic City. It's about 5 degrees warmer, so it's still sticky, still muggy out there. A lot of humidity in the area, but it's pretty close to what it felt like at this exact same time yesterday. Here are your current conditions: 74 in Philly, very light wind. 71 Doylestown, 75 Wilmington, 80 in Atlantic City. Satellite, you see it's clearing out a little bit, so visibility should be improving, it looks like. Here's some rainfall totals from yesterday. I don't think those are right. Let's move on. Your sunrise today was at 5:54. Your sunset's 8:20, and we don't have the record information in there right now. Weather by the numbers for today is a 7, so it's looking a little bit better. Let's get you a look at the 7-day forecast. It's going to be some sun, but humid today, 88. It doesn't look like we're calling for much rain right now today. Sun to storms again Friday, 90, a high of 90. Mostly sunny on Saturday, 87. Sun and clouds, 86. Sun to storms, 83 on Monday. Showers and storms Tuesday. And Wednesday, 85 with showers and storms. So it looks like we're getting back into that unsettled weather pattern again last weekend. But the weekend forecast is shaping up. Looks like it's going to see the sun again a bit over the weekend. Let's take a live look at. Let's take you to an event that's occurring right now. This is Attorney General Jeff Sessions at a news conference. He is talking about he and U.S. Attorney Andrew Lelling for the District of Massachusetts are holding this news conference at 10 a.m. It began at 10 to announce arrests of more than 20 defendants charged with document and benefit fraud. Let's take you there.
That erodes the ability of this nation to have a lawful system of immigration, which I think we are entitled to and must have.
So quick follow-up. So is that the reason why you're really here? I mean, the optics, the politics, why this particular press conference?
This press conference is an ability to point out many of the problems we're having with our immigration system and the need in everyone that enters the country unlawfully and commits a crime is a crime that should never have occurred because they shouldn't have been here to begin with. So it is an important public policy issue. Although I got to say we had a great discussion this morning, as I did in New Hampshire and Maine 2 weeks ago, a follow-up discussion here about the really stunning number of overdose deaths we're seeing, primarily from fentanyl in this region, and I felt some really good ideas and determination from the United States Attorney and his team this morning. I think we're going to back them up with more agents and more support so that they can be even more effective in that challenge too. So we had multiple issues today.
That's all, folks. Thank you.
Thank you all.
You heard it. U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions taking some questions there at the end of his news conference. They were announcing the rest of more than 20 defendants and it sounded like the Attorney General was just fielding some questions there at the very end. We also have right now Vice President Mike Pence is speaking at an event. Let's take that live.
To improve. And we certainly hope that the threat posed by North Korea's nuclear and ballistic
weapons program can be eliminated. There is no escaping the plain fact that North Korea's leadership has exacted unparalleled privation and cruelty upon its people for decades. Torture, mass starvation, public executions, murders and even forced abortions, and industrial-scale slave labor have been the means by which that regime has retained hold on its power for more than 70 years. Today, as we gather at this ministerial, an estimated 130,000 North Koreans are imprisoned for life in unimaginably brutal slave labor camps. Contrasted with a thriving Christian community in South Korea, North Korea's persecution of Christians has no rival on the earth. It is unforgiving, systematic, unyielding, and often fatal. The mere possession of a Christian Bible is a capital offense. And those identified by the regime as Christians are regularly executed or condemned with their families to North Korea's gulags. That's what happened to Ji Hyung-ah, who is here with us, and who I had the honor to meet when I traveled to the region earlier this year. Hyung-ah was imprisoned and tortured simply for having a Bible that her mother had given her. And after a failed escape attempt, the North Korean authorities forced her to abort her unborn child. Hyung-ah was lucky enough to escape with her life. And we are honored to have you with us today. Your faith and your courage inspire us all. In Russia, more than 170,000 Jehovah's Witnesses face similar persecution to other countries around the world. They're legally banned from practicing their faith. Government agents have seized Jehovah's Witnesses headquarters near St. Petersburg, raided their prayer halls across the country, and arrested and imprisoned scores of believers. And turning our attention to the leading state sponsor of terror, the Islamic Republic of Iran. We recognize that the Iranian people enjoy few, if any, freedoms, least of all the freedom of religion. Christians, Jews, Sunnis, Baha'is, and other minority religious groups are denied the most basic rights enjoyed by the Shia majority. And they are routinely fined, flogged, arrested, assaulted, and even killed. In 2016 alone, 20 Sunni Kurds were executed for the crime of allegedly waging war against God, simply for practicing their faith. And the people of the United States of America have a message to the long-suffering people of Iran. Even as we stand strong against the threats and malign actions of your leaders in Tehran, know that we are with you. We pray for you. And we urge you, the good people of Iran, to press on with courage in the cause of freedom and a peaceful future for your people. While religious freedom is always in danger in authoritarian regimes, threats to religious minorities are not confined to autocracies or dictatorships. They can and do arise in free societies as well, not from government persecution, but from prejudice and hatred. In Europe, where religious freedom was born as a principle and is enshrined in law, sadly, religious intolerance is on the rise in many quarters. Just 70 years after the Holocaust, attacks on Jews, even on aging Holocaust survivors, are growing at an alarming rate. Last year, hate crimes against Jews hit a record high in the United Kingdom. And in the same period of time, there were an average of nearly 4 attacks against Jews every day. In France and Germany, things have gotten so bad that Jewish religious leaders have warned their followers not to wear kapos in public for fear that they could be violently attacked. And in too many cases, that's exactly what's happened. From the 2012 murder of 4 small children outside their Jewish school in Toulouse to the 2016 terrorist assault on a Paris kosher supermarket, the world has watched in horror as these attacks on Jewish people have taken place. It is remarkable to think that within the very lifetimes of some French Jews, the same French Jews that were forced by the Nazis to wear identifiable Jewish clothing, that some of those same people are now being warned by their democratic leaders not to wear identifiable Jewish clothing. These acts of violence and hatred and anti-Semitism must end. There are many more examples across the world. And while they're all deserving our attention, we must never forget the barbarism and the violence committed by the terrorists of ISIS and the magnitude of their acts. ISIS has shown a savagery unseen in the Middle East since the Middle Ages, and across the Middle East, Africa, Europe, and beyond. ISIS continues to seek to subjugate and eradicate all who would reject its apocalyptic mania. And believers of many backgrounds have suffered grievously at its hands, including Muslims, Christians, Druze, and many others. But perhaps no faith community was so cruelly targeted by ISIS as the Yazidis. Nadia Murad is with us today. 4 years ago, the butchers of ISIS entered her village and slaughtered more than 600 Yazidi men and boys, including 6 of Nadia's brothers and stepbrothers. Then they stole Nadia away and all the young women and subjugated them to the most degrading form of human slavery. Nadia was brutalized by ISIS fighters during her captivity. She was only able to escape because her captor left a door unlocked, and a neighboring family hid her until she could be smuggled to safety. But too many of her Yazidi sisters weren't so lucky.
Live right now to this is a news conference getting underway at Philadelphia Police Headquarters, where they're talking about the arrest this morning. The suspect turned himself in a series of West Philadelphia sexual assaults. Here's that news conference.
Narrative, and then hold your questions till the end. That would be great. All right? So, Captain Bergman.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Yeah, I can't stress enough, we got a tremendous amount of media coverage on this, and it really did help. We had a lot of tips, which really helped. But as a result of one of those tips, yesterday we were able to develop a suspect. Yesterday we were able to get 3 identifications from our victims on this suspect. Late last night we executed a search warrant at his residence. He was not home at the time. We did recover some evidence out of the house, however. This morning at about 7:30 a.m. he turned himself in at 55th and Pine, and he's now in custody at Special Victims. Male's identified as Robert Johnson. He's a 51-year-old male who lives at 4181 Leidy Avenue. He does have prior arrests, and he is a registered sex offender. He's in custody now. He is going to be charged in connection with the 3 rapes that were part of that pattern. The first one being on the 17th of July at 4700 South Concourse, and the second and third that occurred on the 19th of July at 48th and Girard Avenue. As a result of looking over all the jobs, we did find at least 1 more sexual assault that he's been implicated in. At this point in time, he's not been charged yet. We are working with the DA's office, however, to see if we can charge him with that.
Can you talk to us about that additional sexual assault that you believe he might be involved in?
Yeah, that happened, I believe, in the 4100 block of Girard Avenue. I can give you the exact date if you'd like. June 30th. June 30th, okay. June 30th, 4100 block of Girard Avenue. Complainant indicated that she may have known him somewhat, did not know him by name. When we went out and showed his photo, she identified him as the person that assaulted her.
Was it the same pattern with the gun?
This was slightly different. No gun was seen in that one. However, there was force used in that one.
The person who gave the tips are someone who knows him. So.
Yeah, well, I don't really, anybody who calls in, if they want to remain anonymous, they do. We don't divulge that information at all. But obviously they had some they had some familiarity that they could point us in that direction, and was correct.
Are you able to talk a little bit about the evidence that you said you recovered through the search warrants?
Well, we did recover some. I really don't want to talk a whole lot about it until we discuss with the DA's office. Some clothing, some other items that we recovered that were used during the commission of the crime. But like I said, we want to discuss it with them first and really not put it out there right now.
What was his demeanor when he turned himself in today? And did he say anything in terms of a confession?
Yeah, well, we're attempting to speak to him now. He was calm when he came in. I watched him when they brought him in. He seemed to be pretty calm. But we're working with him now to see if he wants to give a statement. At this point in time, I couldn't tell you.
And how I say it, the brother's involvement, right? Did his brother convince him to turn himself in? What's his role in all of this?
I have no idea about that. I know this morning at 7:30, we had put it out there. We did a good job of putting the information out on him. We were very concerned about overnight hours. We didn't want him to strike again. So we put his information out there, and you people did a great job putting that out, and I guess he decided he would come in and surrender, which he did.
So the first victim, June 30th, you passing this notice name, the other 3 women, total strangers?
Absolute stranger, sexual assaults, right? Did not know him at all.
Did you happen to recover the weapon used?
Like I said, I really don't want to discuss too much the evidence that we recovered at this point in time. We're still sitting out there involved in discussing that. So.
Moving forward, are you concerned that there might be some other assaults that are involved in?
Yeah, well, we always do. We always look for patterns anytime we arrest anybody or there's any type of report of sexual assault. Yeah, absolutely, we are. He was in custody for a while, and he was released, I think, last March. So we'll be looking from March on at anything that matches the same memo or description. We've been doing that already, anyhow.
Would you say you're asking anybody to, maybe come forward if they believe?
Anybody who has any other information about things or crimes they may have committed can contact us at Special Victims. Again, if they want to remain anonymous, that's fine also. They want to just point us in the right direction, that's fine.
How long was he previously incarcerated for?
I believe he was in custody from the records we saw from 2005 until March of 2017.
So you said another sexual assault?
I believe so, yes.
You said you put that information out last night because you were afraid he might strike again. So you think that he would have continued this pattern had he not been caught?
Well, he struck 3 times within 2 days. We had 3 sexual assaults that we know of. So yeah, there's always that fear that somebody's going to strike again. And honestly, I did believe he was going to strike again. So we wanted to make sure we pushed it out as quick as we could to the media as a matter of public safety, which we did. And I was concerned last night, so I was glad this morning when he came and surrendered.
And what was it like to see him turn himself in for you guys after this?
Well, it was very relieving, for us and gratifying, that we got him.
In terms of sort of public safety, I want to know that.
Absolutely, right. Like I said, we had executed the search warrant last night, and clearly we tipped our hand. He knew, at that point. So I was concerned, what may have happened in the hours afterwards, knowing that we knew who he was. So, like I said, it was a relief this morning when I got a call saying that he had come in and surrendered.
And did you know where to find him since he's a registered sex offender, or was he kind of hopping around after he was released? Or
that I couldn't say. He had a residence where he was supposed to as a registered sex offender. I can tell you that. It was at the Blythe Street address. But whether or not he was bouncing around other places, I couldn't tell you.
Today you're just collecting his statements. What's happening in the investigation today? Obviously he's in custody. What happens then?
He's in custody. We'll see if he wants to give a statement or not. We have a warrant for him already for the 3 jobs I discussed already. He will be charged in connection with those. And we're going to continue to research other crimes that have been committed. And see if he's the offender or knows. If he is, he'll be charged.
What are the specific charges?
I have a list of them here if you want. It's quite lengthy, but I will give it to you. He's charged with 2 counts of robbery, 3 counts of rape, 2 counts of involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, 3 counts of kidnapping, 2 counts of VUFA, violation of the Foreign Firearms Act, former convict, not to possess, aggravated indecent assault, 3 counts, unlawful restraint, 3 counts, possession of an instrument crime, 2 counts, recklessly endangering another person, 3 counts, terroristic threats, 2 counts, false imprisonment, 2 counts, sexual assault, 2 counts, indecent assault, 3 counts, indecent exposure, 1 count, and violation of the Uniform Firearm Act. There's 4 additional counts for technical charges.
You may have asked this, but his demeanor when he walked in, I mean, that's a long list to walk in.
Well, I didn't see him walk in 55th and Pine, so I couldn't tell you what his demeanor was there. I did see when he arrived, when he was in custody, and he seemed subdued and calm.
Would you say, so from the first believed incident, June 30th, right? He didn't have a weapon, you said, but he used force, and it was somebody you may have known in passing. But then the other 3 incidents, complete strangers, he had a weapon, so do you believe he's getting more brazen, you know, after
Yeah, the one at 4700 South Concourse and the 2 at 48th and Gerard, absolutely brazen, absolute stranger jobs. Absolutely, I can't stress that enough. They didn't know him at all. They didn't know him at all, and very bold, and I would say very brazen. Absolutely, it was scary when we saw that. We recognized as soon as we got the second job, we recognized it right away. You know what was going on. You know. But I can also tell you, but I can't really speak specifically about it because Southwest Detectives is doing an investigation. They're also looking at them for other robberies out there that match the same MO. But like I said, that's their investigation. But I know they're actively working on it. We are coordinating with them also.
Can you just speak to the relief of having this guy off the street? I mean, attacking, you know, complete strangers is bad enough for having some people.
Right.
That
exactly. Well, it's a relief for me, and I can imagine it's even more relief for people who live out there. Absolutely. I mean, I saw the interviews, I saw the reaction from people. They were very concerned having somebody out there, somebody who's spread it.
Hello, Paul Ripple here from Fox 29 News Now. Looks like we lost our picture there, but Philadelphia police were announcing a suspect's arrest. He turned himself in this morning in connection with a series of sexual assaults in West Philadelphia. Our Steve Keeley's been following this story all morning long. He reported it live first on Fox this morning that the suspect, who had been announced by police last night, had turned himself in, and he was reporting from the Roundhouse all morning about that. Keeping an eye on this to see if we can get the video back. Show you some footage of the suspect again. This is a mugshot of him that was released by police last night when they were announcing that he was they were seeking to speak with him in connection with this case. This was surveillance video of one of the incidents. I believe I heard police say that he'll be charged in connection with 3 of the incidents. They're looking at him for other possible robberies and incidents in the area. They're keeping an eye on keeping the investigation open and looking at him in connection with some other events, but it looks like our feed from the Roundhouse has ended. So thank you very much for watching. This is Fox 29 News Now. Let's see, we'll get you another story right here. Let's take a live look at radar for a moment. We've been talking a little bit about the weather this morning. You see the worst of the storms that we've been affected with lately, that southwesterly flow and storms coming up from the south. Riding the jet stream and moisture coming in have moved off the coast, the heaviest of it. Jenny Joyce reported earlier this morning about some of the problems being felt at the amusement parks in central Pennsylvania, like Knoebels and Hershey Park. Let's take a live look at conditions outside our Old City studios. Here is, there's Old City. Let's get the current conditions for you. It's 74 degrees outside. Dew point is 69. It was in the 70s yesterday, so still muggy, maybe a little bit less so than yesterday. Still humid out there. Winds are out of the west at 8 miles an hour. We're hoping to, maybe we'll stay dry today. We've had a lot of wet weather lately. It sure would be nice to stay away from the rain today and let some places dry out, especially in the central part of the state. We do have the 7-day forecast for you. Thursday, some sun, humid, 88. That's a 7, as Sue Seria put it this morning. Sun to storms, 90 degrees on Friday. Saturday, mostly sunny, 87. Sunday, 86, most sun and clouds. It sure would be nice to get in a dry weekend after what a wet week we've had, a wet weekend dating back to last weekend in some parts. Then it looks like the unsettled pattern returns a bit next week. You've got sun to storms 83 on Monday, showers and storms 82 on Tuesday, and showers and storms 85 on Wednesday. That's your Fox 29 Weather Authority forecast. Meanwhile, President Trump heads to the Midwest today to talk trade after a stunning turn of events yesterday. The U.S. and Europe have both decided to back away from an all-out trade war, something that could have a major impact on both economies. Fox's Doug Luzader has more on the developing story from Washington.
This was President Trump playing hardball, talking about increasing tariffs on a number of countries, and not just Europe we're talking about here. And that's what makes this so surprising, the speed at which this happened. All of a sudden, there was this announcement at the White House yesterday. They still have a lot of details to work out, but they have, at least at this point, a framework. Air Force One is in for a workout today as President Trump prepares to head for the heartland, with stops in Iowa, Illinois, and Missouri talking trade.
This was a very big day for free and fair trade.
Backing away from the brink, President Trump and European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker at the White House yesterday after an agreement that is expected to suspend some looming tariffs and perhaps eventually eliminate many others.
I had the intention to make a deal today, and we made a deal today.
It was a surprising move given how heated this issue has been, with President Trump recently calling Europe a trade foe. But there had been some blowback here at home, with farmers concerned about the impact, especially on soybeans.
What most people were waiting to hear about were auto tariffs. Instead, we heard a lot about soybeans, which suggests that the real focus is on the Farm Belt much more than on the EU.
Democrats, meantime, hammered the administration over an effort to increase aid to farmers over trade concerns.
The president's bailout is like a Soviet-style program where the government props up an entire sector of the economy.
All right, now while a potential deal with Europe may be a very positive sign, there's still China to contend with, and that still has the potential to really blow up here into a full.
Good morning. News of the
It's going to cost you more to buy a popular soft drink, and Facebook takes a big hit. Fox Business Network's Tracy Carrasco has more in today's Morning Business Outlook.
Good morning. News of the easing trade tensions with Europe, sending the Dow up 172 points yesterday. Today will be the busiest day of second quarter earnings, with Dow companies McDonald's and Intel reporting, along with Starbucks, Chipotle, American Airlines, and Amazon. Facebook losing face with shareholders after the company warns about slower revenue growth and rising expenses in its latest earnings. The stock got crushed after hours, and it continues to trade sharply lower in the pre-market. Facebook's user growth also grew more slowly than expected following privacy concerns after the Cambridge Analytica data scandal. Coca-Cola said it is raising prices on its sodas. CEO James Quincy said the price increase was in response to rising costs, like higher freight rates and metal prices after the U.S. placed tariffs on Chinese imports earlier this year. And as an alternative to student loans, colleges have started asking students for a percentage of their future salary to cover the cost of tuition. Norwich University in Vermont is the latest to now offer income-sharing agreements that last a fixed number of years. That's business. For more, log on to foxbusiness.com. In New York, I'm Tracy Carrasco.
That was your morning business outlook with Tracy Carrasco from Fox Business. It seems we've also entered the age of the downloadable guns. The new law will allow companies to sell blueprints for guns that can be made at home using 3D printers. Why this has local authorities very concerned, that's what we had a segment on Good Day Philadelphia this morning to discuss.
What one American company wants to do with a 3D printer has many people concerned, and also those in law enforcement. We've been captivated by videos of 3D printers, even in segments on the show with them, like the one you just saw, making different items like prosthetics for people and animals. And a Missouri teen even made a hand for his father, who's a war veteran. People have made toys and making all kinds of things with him. But one Texas-based nonprofit just fought the government for the right to post blueprints online to create a firearm that people can download and they can make 3D guns. So joining us to talk more about this issue is attorney Shaka Johnson, who's a retired police officer as well. Or former police officer, excuse me, and also retired West Hampton, New Jersey Police Lieutenant Roger Rogers. Thank you both for being with us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
Shaka, first I'd like to start with you because the government recently settled with the person who fired off the first gun, who created this. His name is Cody Wilson, and because basically at first they took it away from him, saying, you can't do this. But it turns out it's violating First and Second Amendment rights. He's able to put out this gun that people can download and make themselves.
That's right. Initially, like you said, the government shut him down. That was during the Obama administration. But as you just said, Mr. Wilson went on the attack, suing the government on, to a lesser degree, Second Amendment grounds, but to a more prominent degree, First Amendment grounds, saying that he had the right to post the specifications for his 3D-based AR-15 under the Freedom of Speech Act. And after a 5-year battle, he won. The government sort of folded and agreed and actually paid some of his legal expenses.
So it looks like next week, then, this is going to be posted online and people will be able to download it.
But you know what, Alex? It's important. This is downloaded with a 3D printer, which right now it's still sort of financially prohibitive. I know when we say printer and we say, someone can print out a gun, it sort of gives us an emotional response initially. But this is not something that dare I say, the average criminal can get their hands on tomorrow from Staples. It still requires a good bit of finance to print out a 3D weapon.
Yes, it's a very specialized printer. However, there are people who have it. And when he first posted it, Cody Wilson, the blueprint for it, it got more than 100,000 downloads. So people are interested in it, and they are trying to see how to make this work. So Roger Rogers is someone who was involved with law enforcement heavily. What were your thoughts on this when hearing about this is going to be made available next week?
My first reaction was, I'm glad I retired. Having something like that on the street is ridiculous. It's unnecessary, to be quite honest.
7:42. Okay, welcome back. We want to get right back to the segment we were doing about the fact that 3D guns could be made available next week. And that's because a nonprofit outside of Texas are going to be posting a blueprint for how you can use a 3D printer to make an AR-15 at home. So before we had the breaking news, former Lieutenant Roger Rogers, you were speaking about your reaction to this. And I want to be clear, federal law allows people to make guns at home, but this is a little different. And why is that?
Basically, you are allowed to build your own firearm at home. Part of that process is you have to purchase what's called a receiver, the lower portion of the gun, which is the heart of the weapon, from a licensed firearm dealer. And part of that process, you have to go through a background check. And also the receiver, they contain serial numbers, which is what we use in law enforcement to trace weapons back to the owner in case of a crime or the weapon is stolen. So what's different about this is that anyone that has access to this device can download
the blueprint and create a weapon that goes undetectable, is untraceable.
And how would that make it difficult for police? And if a crime is committed, it'd be harder to find the person?
Basically, there's no background information on the weapon, or there's no forensic evidence, there's no ballistic evidence. It's easily destroyable. And again, there's no serial number, so we can't trace a weapon back to the point of purchase or the original owner.
Now, if let's say there were to be rules or regulations when it comes to, okay, if you are to make this at home or with a 3D printer, you just have to go and make sure you get a serial number for it. Would it be hard to enforce that?
I don't think so. It's the same procedure that we have in place now. As long as there's a serial number that gives law enforcement a basic starting point of where to investigate.
I don't know how practical that would actually be, because, like you said, someone producing these items, first of all, they're made of plastic. So the parts that you would need to even follow the specifications they're almost parts that you have around the house. I mean, we're talking about plastic. The lower receiver's plastic. The bullets are even plastic according to the specifications. I don't know. That's why they call these ghost guns. I don't know how you could trace these or put any sort of government regulation on something that you can actually either do at home, or you can send the specifications to an agency that has access to a 3D printer and have them send it to you. I don't know how you can trace that.
And it sounds like there's nothing that really can be done, at least at this point with the way things are now, because the fact that the Department of Justice settled with Cody Wilson, the man who has this nonprofit, about saying, hey, you know, you have the right to freely share information, freedom of speech, and you have the right to bear arms.
And it's important to note that is the grounds on which he fought this, the freedom of speech. His position was that posting these specifications online, that was a protected action that he was doing, protected under freedom of speech.
Okay, and right now we're showing the website. It says August 1st, 2018. The downloadable gun formally begins. And, of course, this will add another layer to the whole gun control debate. So this is only really one small section of it that we've discussed here. But thank you so much, Lieutenant Rogers. We thank you so much. And thank you so much, Chaka Johnson, for joining us and giving your opinions.
Thank you. Good morning.
7:45.
House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi has just begun her weekly news conference. Let's take you there live.
Not today, Monday marks the 53rd anniversary since President Johnson signed Medicare and Medicaid into law, delivering essential guarantees of health and economic security for our seniors and their families. The operative word there is guarantees. What the Republicans in Congress, in particular Speaker Ryan and his budgets that he put forth, want to remove the guarantee. If you have no guarantee, you have no Medicare. You have a voucher. Go seniors and others, shop for your health care. You have no guarantee. But, you know, some people don't think that Medicare is at risk. Oh, the Republicans would never do that. Oh, no, they would. And they have it in their budget. They've had it in their Ryan budget again and again. But don't just rest on that. In the 90s and since, the Republicans have said Medicare should wither on the vine. Should wither on the vine. So they have no commitment to Medicare.
Let's take you to, there's another event that's getting underway right now. This is a Q&A at the Heritage Foundation with the Health and Human Services Secretary. Let's take you there now.
We need to remove the today to provide please get offline. So please now welcome the Heritage Foundation's President Kay Colton, who will make some introductory remarks and then introduce Secretary Hazar. Thank you.
Good morning. Welcome to the Heritage Foundation. It's been a busy morning already, and we are in for a real treat right now. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to introduce my friend this morning and to welcome him back to the Heritage Foundation. For those of you who may not know, Alex Azar was sworn in as President Trump's Secretary of Health and Human Services in January 2018. The Department of Health and Human Services is the largest cabinet department in the federal government by spending with a budget of, wait for it, $1.2 trillion in 2018. It is charged with enhancing and protecting the health and well-being of Americans. The department encompasses not just healthcare programs such as Medicare and Medicaid, but also scientific institutions such as CDC, NIH, FDA, human services programs such as the Administration for Children and Families, and preparedness and response work to protect Americans from natural disasters, infectious disease, and other threats. Secretary Azar has spent his career working in senior healthcare leadership roles in both the public and private sectors. His current tenure at HHS is a second tour of duty at the department. He served as HHS's general counsel from 2001 to 2005, and then as deputy secretary, the department's number 2 official and chief operating officer. During his time as deputy secretary, he played key roles in international affairs, global health diplomacy, implementation of new Medicare prescription drug programs, public health emergency, preparedness and response efforts, and food and drug regulation. Full plate. He also led the department through several successful management and operational transformations. He joined the private sector in 2007, moving to Indiana with his wife and children, and it is my pleasure to welcome here today the Secretary of Health and my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody. It's great to be here with so many great friends, not just Kay, but I'm looking around. I'm seeing so many friendly faces in the audience already. I hope it remains friendly during Q&A, Kay. We'll see. But thank you for that very kind introduction. And it's always an honor to be introduced by a friend, but also by a member of the HHS family. I had not known that Kay got one of her big starts in her career from over at HHS. Delighted to be here at the Heritage Foundation again. Heritage has played such a vital role in so many of the important public policy debates of the last several decades. Many administrations, including this one, have benefited from the work of the Heritage Foundation on public policies that reflect principles of free enterprise, limited government, individual freedom, traditional American values, and a strong national defense. Today, I'd like to share how some of these principles can help us address one of the most significant public policy issues of our time, reforming the American healthcare system. America's healthcare system is huge and immensely complex. It's the single largest sector of our economy, consuming more than 1/6 of our GDP. The Department of Health and Human Services itself, as Kay mentioned, is gigantic, with over 80,000 employees and a budget, I hate to break this to you, Kay, it's now $1.3 trillion, more than 300 individual programs. Standing alone, we would be the 5th largest government on earth. We're bigger than the United Kingdom. But just because we have a complex and very large system and complex challenges does not mean that there are no simple principles for reform. One of America's greatest leaders, Ronald Reagan, applied common sense solutions to the supposedly intractable challenges of his time, like an overly complicated tax code and a bloated, broken welfare system. Like President Trump, he saw straight through how Washington works, and he had a pithy description of how problems are usually handled here. Quote, government's view of the economy could be summed up in a few short phrases, he said. If it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. And if it stops moving, subsidize it. For too long, that has more or less been the federal government's approach to health care. We saw it most recently with the Affordable Care Act, which imposed a new tax or regulation, or sometimes both, on just about every moving part in our healthcare system. There was even a tax on not buying the right kind of health insurance until President Trump and Congress repealed it. The Trump administration's first instincts are the opposite of the big government nightmare that President Reagan described. If something in our healthcare system isn't working, we'll see if there's a regulation in the way. If prices are high, we'll see if there's a tax involved. If prices keep rising, we'll see if there's a subsidy driving them. We all come by these lessons in different ways. As many of you may know, I went to that bastion of conservative free market thinking, Yale Law School. Many land use controls. I had a land use control professor there. Not that I was so interested in land use controls in law school, but just a brilliant professor, Robert Ellickson. And he used to offer us a Reagan-esque lesson. He'd say, when you take Metro North in from New Haven to Manhattan, and you see land with burnout buildings on it, or land that's not being put to its highest and best use, even if only as a parking lot, ask yourself the following question: how's the government involved here? That's always been a guiding principle for me in thinking about economics and regulation. When things don't work the way they should, when we ask why the rest of the economy is fully digitized while healthcare isn't, when we wonder why healthcare lacks the dynamism and consumerism of the rest of the economy, I look for culprits. And so very often the culprit is government action, sometimes from decades or even a century ago. In some cases, that means that government action may often be needed to fix what government itself broke. Sometimes the necessary government action may be strong medicine because markets have become so distorted or so diminished. And sometimes our solutions, because of political realities, may be subject to the law of second best, to use law and economics speak. Always, however, our actions will be aimed at building markets and competition, restoring price signals and incentives, and empowering consumers through choice, rather than having government decide what is best for the individual. Today, I want to talk about how these principles apply to a few of the priorities that I've laid out with the President for HHS. First, reforming the individual market for insurance. Second, bringing down the high price of prescription drugs. And third, transforming our healthcare system into one that pays for value. Let's begin with the individual insurance market. The Affordable Care Act created a thicket of subsidies, regulations, and taxes to help Americans without employer insurance secure coverage on the individual market. In theory, it was supposed to not only expand this kind of private coverage, but to bring costs down. It has come up short on both objectives. According to an HHS analysis from 2013, the year before the ACA's most significant new regulations took full effect, through 2017, individual premiums in 39 states rose an average of 105%. They have more than doubled. As prices skyrocketed, it is little surprise that the real market for individual insurance, that is, the part that is not supported by the ACA's huge subsidies, has actually shrunk. From 2016 to 2017, HHS found that the number of unsubsidized enrollees dropped by about 20%. The only factor keeping the individual market alive is the tens of billions of dollars of subsidies supplied directly to insurers each year. The fundamental flaw of the ACA is that it narrowed the competition for insurance options and laid down heavy-handed controls on the prices that could be charged. One of the most notable price controls doesn't, I think, get enough attention. In a free market, young people can buy individual insurance for about 1/6 of what it costs older people, because younger people use fewer healthcare resources. But the ACA imposed a price floor. Younger Americans must be charged at least 1/3 of what older Americans pay. This kind of price control chokes off private markets. Young people are by definition getting less than they pay for, so they opt out of the system. And then that's not a good deal for older Americans either, because they're the only ones left paying into the system, so their premiums rise. Congress created this broken system, and it's going to take an act of Congress to fix it. But we have flexibility within the law to try out some free market reforms, and we've done so in two significant ways so far this year. Soon after I arrived at HHS, we issued a proposed rule to expand access to short-term insurance policies that are free of the ACA's strictures, and as a result, cost as little as 1/3 the price. The previous administration limited access to these plans in the hope that they could drive more people back into the ACA market. Remember, if it's still moving, regulate it. We care deeply about consumers having the information they need. So we made it clear that these short-term plans aren't for everyone, but Americans deserve all the affordable alternatives possible. Second, earlier this summer, the Department of Labor, my friend Alex Acosta, finalized a rule to significantly expand access to association health plans, under which small businesses and individuals running their own companies can come together to buy insurance. The number of small businesses choosing to offer insurance to their employees has been declining for years. but getting government out of the way has the potential to reverse that trend. Another aspect of the Affordable Care Act that has been of great concern is its substantial expansion of the Medicaid program. To the extent that the ACA does cover more Americans, it is mostly due to the expansion of this taxpayer-funded program. Medicaid has historically played an important role covering low-income mothers and their children, the elderly, and the disabled. But the ACA expanded the program well beyond these populations, making it a free source of coverage for 15 million new, able-bodied adults, including many without any children. Perversely, the ACA offers more generous support for states to ensure these populations for traditional, vulnerable Medicaid populations. Supporting legislation to undo those perverse incentives is a priority for this administration. But in the meantime, we want to rethink how Medicaid serves these able-bodied working-age adults, which is why we've encouraged states to consider work and community engagement requirements for these populations. For these enrollees, Medicaid should be not just a government insurance card, but a pathway out of poverty to fuller purpose and better health. This vision for Medicaid, laid down by our CMS Administrator, Seema Verma, reflects our general principles for programs that support low-income Americans. Programs should take a holistic approach to better health and greater self-sufficiency. They should, to the extent possible, avoid work disincentives and income cliffs, and they should offer states flexibility in achieving these goals. The importance of state flexibility goes beyond Medicaid. President Trump's budget proposes to replace the entirety of the ACA subsidy structure, as well as the Medicaid expansion, with a flexible block grant. As many of you know, this is similar to a proposal put forth by state and think tank leaders, including some heritage scholars in this room today. It harkens back to the new federalism approach of President Reagan, which was inspired by the Heritage Foundation's mandate for leadership. Since the Reagan administration, significant amounts of HHS's social service programs have been distributed by block grant, freeing states to use funds in ways that meet their needs. What President Trump has proposed is to apply state flexibility to much, much larger entitlements, a generationally significant shift back to the states. Now, I realize that proposing significant reform for two major individual entitlement programs is the kind of thing that Heritage Fellows might do in one morning before coffee. But it's not very often that we have a president who is willing to call for such radical and yet necessary reforms. The president has also called for historic changes to another piece of our healthcare system, our market for prescription drugs. American private industry has produced so many of the world's miracle drugs, like cures for hepatitis C. Today, we're on the verge of stunning advances in the war on cancer, including treatments that use our own immune systems to fight the disease. We also have access to cheap, effective treatments through the world's strongest market for generic drugs, which actually delivers us lower prices for many generics than European patients pay. But in some important ways, we do not have a real market for prescription drugs. One fundamental aspect of a market is generally that if you cut your price, more people will buy your product. With apologies to the PhDs in the audience, you don't need to be an economist to know that. And yet, that is not by and large how drug prices work in America. If a company lowers its price for a given drug, the drug can actually become less desirable vis-a-vis its competition. Obviously, consumers wouldn't look at it that way, but they don't decide which drugs are available on formulary and at what cost. That is decided by insurers, employers, and pharmacy benefit managers. This could work well if these parties' incentives were aligned, but all of them are paid as a percentage of a drug's list price. When prices drop, the consumer may save, but those actually negotiating for the consumer make less money. President Trump has put this whole system on notice. We have the power to break up this arrangement ourselves through administrative action because it relies on a loophole in federal law that allows these otherwise highly regulated entities to essentially double deal. Already, we have seen drug companies hit pause on price increases or actually cut prices, understanding that we are on the verge of significant and transformative reform in the drug pricing system in the United States. Fixing the broken incentives around list prices is one piece of the president's plan. But a real market also requires that consumers competitors, and other private actors are pushing down prices. The three other elements of our plan are therefore giving private negotiators more power within our system to negotiate with drug companies, empowering consumers to bring down out-of-pocket costs, and stoking competition in drug markets. Now, delivering on this plan will involve taking some steps that may be unexpected. It took some by surprise last week when I directed the Food and Drug Administration to stand up a working group to examine how importing drugs from other countries could help address patient access problems caused by spikes in drug prices. This shouldn't necessarily have been a surprise because the President and I have been very clear when we rolled out our drug pricing blueprint earlier this year. We are open to all solutions that put American patients first, meaning they're safe, effective, and respectful of patient choice and the incentives that drive American innovation. The FDA will be looking at situations where we have good reason to think importation could fit those three requirements. Where a company that's a sole manufacturer of a drug in the United States takes a big price increase on a drug that no longer has any patent protections or exclusivities. Because there are no IP rights involved, manufacturers in other countries could help introduce new competition without undermining incentives for innovation. We've long had concerns about how broad-based importation, open borders for drugs, could raise safety issues. But especially within the bounds of this precise proposal, we believe it may be possible to introduce more competition while keeping one of the crown jewels of our system, our closed distribution network, entirely safe. Thankfully, we do have successful competition and negotiation in parts of our drug markets, including within Medicare, where Part D plans aggressively negotiate with drug companies to keep costs down. Those insisting that we must have, quote, direct negotiation between the government and drug companies aren't really interested in negotiation. Generally, they're calling for the federal government to impose a single formulary for all Medicare patients with no right to choose another option and use the possibility of denying coverage of certain drugs to drive price down. This doesn't respect patient access and violates one of the core principles of American healthcare. In our system, you have exit rights. To coin a phrase, the way our system works, if you don't like your plan, you don't have to keep it. We know that we can respect this principle while expanding coverage and bringing down prices because we've done so in the past. Many of you here will remember the complaints during the 2000s that Medicare Part D's negotiation system would be a giveaway to drug companies. But because it harnesses market forces and has driven thriving generic drug competition, Part D has actually come in tens of billions of dollars under budget while providing seniors with the life-saving drugs that they need. Let me repeat that because I know that those words are never heard in Washington, tens of billions of dollars under budget. The good news is that there is certainly room for improvement even within Medicare Part D. Some rules currently stand in the way of plans doing the best job they can to negotiate for seniors and for us as taxpayers, and we look forward to reforming them to generate savings for seniors and for us. Part D has proven that market forces can deliver benefits to our seniors at a sustainable cost. Unfortunately, elsewhere in our programs, we have made very significant, important commitments to pay for the health care of older Americans without setting up a system that can sustainably deliver them. Margaret Thatcher once quipped that the problem with socialism is that eventually you run out of other people's money. We at HHS are told something every year by our actuaries in rather more complex terms. But there's no way around it. Medicare is running out of other people's money, and those other people happen to be our children. The Medicare Hospital Insurance Trust Fund will be out of money by 2026, necessitating large tax increases or benefit cuts. Meanwhile, the Medicaid program is on track to consume an ever larger share of federal and state government spending. It already takes up more than 1/3 of many state budgets. President Trump has made a solemn vow to protect these programs for today's seniors and future generations. To do that, we need to reform these programs in the way we know works, introducing market-based competition. For a while now, there's been a consensus that something simply has to change about how these programs work. As healthcare has grown more and more complex, the traditional model of paying doctors based on the volume of procedures that they perform, as much of Medicare does, has made less and less sense. There's been some progress in the private market on moving payment from, quote, volume to value. and some useful innovations within Medicare. But everyone agrees we've got a long way to go. And with today's demographic and fiscal trends, we don't have a lot of time to accomplish the changes that we need. The problem with many efforts to pay for value is that they have assumed central planners, the government, have to be the ones to determine value. But if the government writes the equation for value, the answer is never going to be cheap or simple, and special interests will find a way to manipulate it. Americans know there's a better way. In every other sector of our economy, we don't expect the government to set prices. We rely on the free exchange of information among buyers and sellers, between competing interests, to do it. We can get better outcomes from our healthcare system at a lower cost by putting patients, not government, in charge. Since arriving at HHS, I've laid out a vision for how to get there, which includes putting patients in charge of their own health data, boosting price and quality transparency, pioneering new payment models within Medicare and Medicaid, and undoing regulations that are impeding this transition and care coordination in particular. As I said earlier, when there's a place that our healthcare system isn't meeting people's needs, the first question that I ask is, what might government be doing to prevent private actors from solving it? As it turns out, when it comes to paying for value, government is doing a great deal to get in the way. One issue is just the sheer complexity of our billing systems. Earlier this month, under the leadership of Administrator Verma, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services proposed some of the most fundamental reforms to Medicare that we've seen in decades, including measures to simplify how doctors are paid for basic evaluation visits. Currently, there are 5 different levels of visits, which allow doctors to get paid more if the visit is coded as more complex. 5 levels may not sound like much to you, but you don't just get to check one of those boxes. You've got to exhaustively document the character.
We're going to interrupt this speech by the Health and Human Services Secretary speaking to Heritage Foundation to bring you a live look at Skyfox, which is over the scene of a reported shooting in Allentown, Pennsylvania. We're working to get some information confirmed, but let's show you what's happening here. We're hearing there was a shooting here in Allentown. This is reported to be 17th and Lehigh streets in Allentown, southwest Lehigh, I believe. Looks like police and maybe some SWAT crews are at the scene. Again, that's Skyfox over the scene of a reported shooting in Allentown at 17th and Southwest Lehigh streets. We're working to get more information here. We're taking a look for a minute at the feed from Skyfox. You can see police and other emergency responders are here at the scene. They've got the area roped off there, SWAT crew at the scene as well. Skyfox panning out to show you the entire neighborhood here where 17th Street and Southwest Lehigh meet. We're going to stay with this for a couple of minutes to keep an eye on what's happening. This is, again, a reported shooting in Allentown, Pennsylvania. It's police have responded to the area of 17th and Southwest Lehigh Streets. Looks like members of the SWAT team are piling into their vehicle here. Again, you're watching a shooting scene in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Police have responded to the area of 17th and Southwest Lehigh Streets. Looks like there's a SWAT team with police at the scene. We're waiting for more information from police. Local news reports say that police are asking neighbors to stay in their homes. We're working to confirm more information, and we'll bring that to you as soon as we have it. This is Skyfox over the scene in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Again, Paul Ruppel here with Fox 29 News Now. You're watching Skyfox over the scene of a police response to a reported shooting in the area of 17th and Lehigh Streets in Allentown. We're working to get more information. I do see local reports, local newspaper reports, that neighbors are being urged to stay indoors as police work at the scene here. You can see some officers crouching behind cars. We're looking for more information from Allentown Police, but local reports say that nearby residents and neighbors in the area of 17th and Southwest Lehigh are being urged to stay inside. Paul Ruppel here with Fox 29. We're watching a situation here where a shooting has been reported in Allentown. Looks like there's a SWAT team on the scene. I do want to cut away from the shot for a moment out of abundance of caution. We certainly don't want to give away tactical positions if police are working. It looked like some officers were crouching behind patrol cars trying to, seek shelter and stay safe. So we want to pan away there. It looked like some other officers may be getting into position. We're waiting for more information. Again, this is a shooting that's been reported in Allentown, Pennsylvania. It looks like a SWAT team is among the folks who have responded to the scene there. We are looking for more information, but I can tell you that the initial call was in the area of 17th and Southwest Lehigh Streets. Seeing local reports from the nearby newspapers saying that someone was shot and that officers are encouraging residents to stay indoors. So this shot looks rather static right now, so let's take that for a moment. This is Allentown, Pennsylvania, in the area of 17th and Lehigh. Again, I mentioned moments ago, we don't want to give away any kind of tactical positions. We're always careful with our chopper shots when we're, when police are at the scene, when it's a dangerous situation, they're moving into position. Looks like they're just behind the vehicle right now, but we'll pan away to stay away from that shot. We will bring you information on this as soon as we get it. Let's take a live look at Old City right now while we keep an eye on that situation. We're up to 77 degrees in Philadelphia. Dew point is 69 degrees. Winds out of the west at 4 miles per hour. While we're waiting for some more information from that scene, let's take a look at our weather cameras. We'll show you some looks around the region. All right, Paul Ripple here again with you for Fox 29 News Now. We were showing you earlier a reported shooting scene in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Our Skyfox was over the scene of that, and we were awaiting some more information. It looked like police had moved into kind of a standoff mode. They were outside the location of where the shooting was reported to have occurred. Skyfox is actually headed to a different incident that's ongoing right now, so we'll bring that to you if we can in a little bit. Let's take you to Speaker of the House Paul Ryan is holding his weekly news conference. Let's take you there live right now.
Derail or largely delay a big part of our agenda, our appropriation bills, our infrastructure bills. And it would clearly dramatically delay the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh to go to the Supreme Court, which we expect to get done by October 1st when the Supreme Court reconvenes. So for many reasons, I don't think it's the right way to go. But we do expect compliance. We want to make sure that we get compliance. And we look at all the various tools we have available, including having the kinds of dialogues we've been having recently in order to get compliance from DOJ.
Well, what are those specific documents related to the Mueller investigation?
Oh, well, so we have a process. We have a process with DOJ on that. We have a process with DOJ on the documents, and the special counsel gets involved when some documents might be in their purview and could compromise their investigation. Those documents do not come. So we have a process with DOJ to make sure that we deconflict any of these matters. Yeah.
So on that front, given what you just said, did you try to discourage your colleagues from taking this step? Do you view this as a legitimate effort or as a stunt?
Look, I think they know how I feel about this. We all want to make sure that we get compliance, and different members have different beliefs on how best to go achieve those goals, but we want to make sure that we get compliance from DOJ with our document requests. We've gotten a great deal of progress on the compliance, but we do not have full compliance, and we expect to get that. One
of those colleagues of yours who
Didn't you guys want to talk about the Better Off Now? You know, did I show you this?
Right after this question.
Okay, thanks.
One of your colleagues that brought those articles of impeachment, Jim Jordan, will announce shortly, we understand, that he's running for Speaker of the House. Has he shared those plans with you, and could you support Jim Jordan for Speaker?
I'm not going to be here. I support Kevin McCarthy, everybody knows that, and I'm not going to be here, and he has not talked to me about that.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday you addressed these interns and you asked them to rediscover their common humanity and treat other people with respect. I want to ask you, one of your colleagues in the House, Jason Lewis, there's been some reports about in his prior life before coming to Congress, he was a talk show host.
I was wondering where you were going with this.
He said some very, in some people's minds, disrespectful things about women and African Americans, saying the latter had an entitlement mentality, and that women, he lamented that women couldn't be called certain words. Should he apologize for those comments?
Yeah, so, I actually, whenever I drive around western Wisconsin, as I had in the past years, I'd turn on Minneapolis radio, and I remember Jason Lewis back in those days. He was a shock jock. That was his job at the time. I've seen some of these comments, and I obviously don't support those comments. But the Jason Lewis I know here, who's a congressman, is an extremely conscientious man, a very hardworking, a very effective member of Congress, who has been nothing but an exemplary congressman who represents his constituents well.
Would an apology help?
I'll leave it to him.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. When the House returns in September, there'll be just 19 days before the midterm election. How confident are you right now in election security and in the U.S. government's ability to protect itself from any potential Russian interference? And do you think there needs to be more done by Congress to protect the integrity of the election?
No, I believe, the appropriations process is something that's always ongoing. I do believe we have learned a great deal more about how Russia attempts to interfere with elections and meddles in elections. We've learned a great deal more on the cyber front on that. So I think we're far better prepared today than we were just a couple of years ago on that front. Number one. Number two, we got to make sure that we have the right kind of information sharing with states, with secretaries of states, and with anybody else that could see a cyber threat from Russia, including our allies, by the way, when they have their own elections. So I think we are far better prepared for this. That is part of the reason why we have these investigations. And there's always more we can do to learn and prepare ourselves for these things, because their threats evolve, their tactics change, and we have to always be vigilant to make sure that we guard against evolving threats and tactical changes from Russia, who tries to interfere with not just our democracy, but all democracies.
Last question.
Lindsay.
We met with the president yesterday, and I understand you guys talked about government funding. Do you feel, two questions on that. One, do you feel the president is willing to push the border wall fight until after the fiscal year, so you guys can get some appropriations bills enacted into law before the deadline? And also, you had said yesterday that defense was a priority. Is there a plan for ensuring defense gets through? It seems like on the Senate side, their strategy for that is adding labor HHS. Are you guys willing to do that here?
Well, first of all, Leader McConnell and I, like we always do, had a very productive meeting. We walked the president through our strategy for appropriations before the fiscal year. He agreed with our strategy. So we think we have a unified strategy to make sure that we can get as many appropriation bills done as possible. So we think we have a very good chance, unlike a handful of years in the past, we think we have a very good chance of getting a lot of these appropriation bills done and into law before the fiscal year deadline. There will be some bills that will not pass, that won't be ready or done by then, and we'll have to have a CR to bridge us over until later on. As far as the wall is concerned, we've gotten some wall funding already underway. That is being funded, but I think it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And the president's willing to be patient to make sure that we get what we need so that we can get that done, because border security is extremely important. I would note that the position between our two parties could not be starker. We are funding the wall, we are for securing the border, and the Democrats are for abolishing ICE. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. I think we have a very clear contrast on that. But we feel very good that we are on the same page and in sync with the administration and the president on getting as much appropriation bills done as possible, including funding our military on time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Hey guys, they're going to open it up if you want to take.
Conference on Capitol Hill. He was talking a little bit about, getting some questions about the articles of impeachment that were presented by, I believe it was 11 members of his caucus against Special Counsel, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who is overseeing Special Counsel's investigation, and some other questions about procedure there and other matters. This was occurring as a vote was occurring on the U.S. House floor. Looks like this is just a conference report vote that's occurring. Let's give you a live look at Philadelphia. This is the Benjamin Franklin Parkway. A little bit nicer today, certainly drier than it has been in recent times. We've had a lot of rain over the last couple of days. I believe some parts of Pennsylvania have come close to a foot of rain with the flow that's been coming onshore and up from south to north. Resulted in the closure of two major amusement parks in central Pennsylvania, Hershey Park and Knoebels. But looks like maybe we have a chance to dry out a bit today. Let's get you a look at radar. There you go, there's ultimate Doppler. You see that rain, some of the heaviest rain moving way off the coast, so it's out of here for now. Let's give you another live look. This is President Trump arriving in Iowa, I believe. Let's take you there right now.
Many of them are actually holding signs. No cheering yet or anything, but there are certainly no protesters.
You can hear a reporter giving some information. This is President Trump arriving in Iowa. Air Force One here. Presidential limo waiting for the president coming down the stairs and he's taking his events in Iowa. There's President Trump emerging from Air Force One. You'll see the second person behind him is his daughter, Ivanka. They are visiting Iowa and Illinois today to talk workforce development and trade. I believe he just landed in Dubuque, Iowa.
People are starting to cheer USA, USA. And Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds is also at the base of the plane waiting to greet President Trump. And it's hard to see right now, but I believe that they're about to shake hands. President Trump is now walking towards a crowd of supporters. People are cheering louder and louder. They're very excited to see President Trump. Of course, we can see Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds closely behind him. He's just starting to shake hands with people now, going through the line of people who are just rushing to the front of the line to meet him. Again, closely followed by Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds. He's making his way all the way down the line. And again, people are holding up signs. I see Buy American, Hire American. Sure. So we arrived to the airport at 7, and that is the time that we saw around four people just starting to arrive. And so from there, it obviously gathered to a crowd of just over 100. I took a head count earlier, and that was right around 100 people, a little over actually, and since then more people have trickled in, so I'd probably say around 120 people. Now he's going to the other side of the line of people, greeting them as well. Again, he's standing right next to Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds. People there are very happy to see him, many of them snapping pictures, holding up signs. You can see several dozen people wearing Make America Great Again hats. Many of them strolled in wearing patriotic attire, whether it's American flag suit jackets or pants or socks. People are obviously very excited to see President Trump here this morning.
All right, we want to take you live to an incident that's occurring in, I believe this is Elkins Park, Pennsylvania. Skyfox is over the scene of what's reported to be a two-alarm fire. And let's get you right out there right now. This is a two-alarm house fire on the 800 block of Rock Lane in Cheltenham Township. That's Cheltenham Township in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. It looks like firefighters are on the scene there, on the roof there, working to vent the roof. Still see smoke coming from the fire seen here, so we'll stay with us here for a little while. This is reported to be a two-alarm house fire on Rock Lane in Cheltenham Township, Montgomery County. You're watching fire crews battle what's reported to be a two-alarm fire at a home in Cheltenham Township. This is on the 800 block of Rock Lane in Cheltenham Township, Montgomery County. We're hearing firefighters found flames when they got to the home, and they struck the second alarm. You see crews there working to put out the flames. They've got some smoke still, dark smoke still emerging from the home, and they're up on the roof, it appears, to try and ventilate the home. We'll stay with this for a little bit and bring you any other information we can get. It looks like Skyfox is leaving that scene. It looked like firefighters have made good progress in putting down a blaze on the 800 block of Rock Lane in Cheltenham Township, Montgomery County. We're going to sign off for now. Thank you very much for watching Fox 29 News Now. Have a great day.